Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to your Danville City Commission regular meeting for this Monday, June the 12th, 2017. I believe we are all present and accounted for. Welcome back, Mr. Atkins, again. With that, I will ask Commissioner Atkins to lead us in a moment of prayer.
Thank you, sir. Most gracious one, we thank you for yet another beautiful day, one that you have provided for us and for our community. We thank you for this great community that you've allowed us to live in. And our prayer and desire for tonight is that all that we do tonight will be pleasing in thy sight. In his name I ask, amen.
Amen. And yours truly, if you'll stand, I'll lead us in Pledge of Allegiance. We are at the, before I get there, Commission, everybody's had an opportunity to review the agenda. If it meets with your approval, I'll carry on. Very good. We have two opportunities in each of our meetings to hear the public. The first opportunity, in just a moment, is to hear the public from anyone who would like to speak on any particular agenda items, and agenda items only. After we get through our general business or general government business, we will have an open hear the public on any topic you'd like to discuss. With that said, the microphone is open to the public. Paula?
Thank you so much. Paula Fowler with the Danville-Boyle County Chamber of Commerce, wearing that hat this time. I've sent you all the results of a poll that we sent to our membership, and in 8 hours' time, 9% of our respondents sent comments in and responded, and 77% of those businesses are opposed to the proposed tax increases. And I just want to share a few things, because I've heard different arguments for it. I know that you have projects. But payroll taxes cannot be likened to the transient hotel tax by saying that 66% of our commuter workforce will be paying taxes like visitors passing through pay the hotel tax. Visitors come and go, employees stay. The increase in taxes will decrease the spending power of their wages, and employers will be pressured to increase wages to cover a payroll tax increase. So a payroll tax increase actually acts as a pass-through on the employer, whether large or small. We also think it's a fallacy to think that surrounding communities to Danville are not our competitors. With higher tax rates, and as a result, increased costs of labor in doing business, a business prospect could get the best of both worlds by locating in lower-cost Harrodsburg while gaining the amenities of Danville in close proximity. It's more likely now that employees and managers of Harrodsburg facilities like Corning or Hitachi may already live in Danville or Boyle County, and they're only paying property taxes. Likewise, if you follow the example of R.R. Donnelly, which is now called LSC Communications and American Greetings, business prospects may seek to locate outside the city limits as a condition of their location to lower their costs of doing business. This is still a condition for both American Greetings and LSC Communications locations. They do not want to be annexed into the city due to increased taxes and costs. And this could become more of a pressure point for future business prospects. The rule of thumb for economic development is that a total of 3% in payroll taxes, both combined city and county jurisdictions, is a tipping point in which the higher rate becomes a penalty to new business development. And the suggestion that Danville's increased tax rate will still be lower than competitor communities such as Georgetown, Versailles, and Midway is inaccurate. With the exception of Versailles on occasion, these are not our competitor communities for business location. These are our regular competitors with their current combined city and county payroll tax rates, and I'll share this with all of you. Elizabethtown is 1.35%, city only with no county tax. Bardstown is 1.5%. City is at 0.5, and the county's at 1. Shelbyville is 2.5%, with the city at 1.5 and the county at 1. Corbin is 2.0%, with the city at 1 and the county at 1. Somerset is 1.0%, with the county only and no city tax. Franklin is 1.75, with the city at 1.0 and the county at 0.75. And Bowling Green is 2.85, with the city at 1.85 and the city at 1.0. And finally, Winchester at 3.5, with the city at 2 and the county at 1.5. Both Bowling Green and Winchester would be the only competitor communities with a higher combined tax rate, but Bowling Green's city rate would be lower and Winchester's would be the same. So we just want to speak on behalf of the business community, particularly our members, saying that 77% of them are opposed to these two proposed tax increases. You did both those increases 4 years ago, along with 20 cents per hundred on motor vehicle tax. You did an increased property tax of 4%, and you've increased the insurance premium 3%, now up to 9.9% on every insurance policy that we pay. We don't feel adding an additional $1.9 million in new taxes so soon after the last tax increase is reasonable. The tax increases being adopted since 2015 are growing faster than our business community is seeing any kind of significant growth. And in the paper, they reported an individual working 40 hours per week at $10 per hour would only pay an additional $104 annually. After taxes, that's 2 days' worth of wages for that person. And I'm just going to say we also don't see the need. A lot of comments that I shared with you think that you need to stretch this out over multiple years, or you need to look at cutting more. And one of the things that did come up was this preservation position. We've only gotten $24,000 in the last 5 years in grant money. I think you had $18,000 this year, which you have to put 16% in. $10,000 annually for an $80,000 position. Only 15 of the 23 certified local government cities have, or I should say 15 of the 23 have non-qualified people running their programs, and they're getting as much as those with trained people. You can go to the Kentucky Heritage Council website and see this. We don't think there are a large enough number of buildings left to be put on the National Register, and we think you can handle any issues that come up by setting aside some money for challenging issues. We don't see a need for an $80,000 position as part of this tax increase. So I just share all of this because our members responded in 8 hours. To have 9% of my membership send me back comments and their responses in 8 hours and have 77% opposed really shows a lot of interest and a lot of concern about a tax raise. So thank you for hearing me on behalf of our members.
Anyone else?
Thank you, Mayor and Commissioners. First of all, I want to thank you for the hard work you do on behalf of the city. It certainly is appreciated. I'll be brief. I was here last meeting to talk about opposition to the proposed tax increase, and since that time, the Central Kentucky Association met, and their board of directors sent you all a letter that went on record speaking for the approximately 70 members opposed to the dramatic tax increase. Another broker personally called me. I wanted to add to the list of brokers that I named before. That's broker Sandy Statham, just so that'd be on the record. And then I wanted to simply mention something that I think we're talking about competitiveness here. I shared an article with you on email. You probably didn't have time to read it yet, but it was in the April 24th, 17th edition of the Lexington Herald about Versailles, which I think would be considered a competitor of Danville for economic development. And the headline sure caught my attention because it said Woodford County landed 3 significant new plants in the last 18 months, 626 jobs, $117 million in new investment in the county. And I thought, wow, that's the way to increase the revenue in the city, is to bring new industry and get more from the payroll tax. I was thinking, actually, I heard that we were possibly in contention for one of the industries that came there, a bakery of some kind. But they chose Versailles reportedly because of their nearness to Lexington and also the interstate. We can't really help those two things, but their payroll tax, is 1.5. Their net profit is 1.5. So I think we would be at a disadvantage competing against them and some other cities. Last thing is, I was just interested when I heard about their sales, and I went on their site, and the mayor had a speech printed on there, and I want to just read you a short part of it. He gave examples of the industrial development, but he said, we've also seen a steady increase in the number of new small businesses opening up in Versailles, and we will continue providing support to these enterprises. It's common sense, but a government cannot be effective unless it is also efficient. So I kind of like that quote, and I hope maybe you all share that sentiment. Thank you.
Thank you, Mark. Anyone else? Going once, going twice. Moving right along. You have before you the approval of the minutes, copy of the minutes from the previous May 18th and May 22nd meeting. Do I hear a motion to approve?
I move for approval of the meeting minutes for May 18th and May 22nd as presented.
Thank you, Commissioner Cottle. Do I hear a second?
Second.
Thanks, Commissioner Terry. Discussion, amendments, corrections? Seeing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, like sign, motion carries. Item 2 is before you the Airport Board reappointment. I'm recommending Mr. David Coyle be reappointed. David is the Secretary-Treasurer of the Board, longtime member. I entertain a motion to that effect.
I'll offer a motion to approve Mr. Cowell's reappointment.
Thank you, Mr. Atkins. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you, Commissioner Sears. Any further discussion? Seeing none, I'll call the question. All in favor of the motion signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed, like sign. Motion carries. Item 3, you have before you my recommendation of the Beautification Committee, which actually comes from the CVP, as they would like to, since Brittany Adams is stepping down in order to fulfill some competing demands, CVB feels that Wendy White would be the best replacement. Do I hear a motion to that effect?
I'll move to accept that recommendation.
Thanks, Commissioner Sears. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you, Commissioner Cottle. Any discussion?
Let's see. I think I had a note here. Yeah, actually, we'll bring that up after we vote on this. I do have a comment on this, but
Okay.
and I'll make a little correction for you. I think that Wendy White's stepping in because Mark Morgan's stepping down and Brittany's moving up to chairman of the Convention Visitors Bureau. If I think I got that right. Okay.
Well, if you insist. It's a little misleading in the wording, but I'll take your word for it. Motion's been made and seconded. Any further comments? Seeing none, I'll call the question. All in favor of the motion signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed, like sign.
So my question, Mayor, it looks like on all the folks that are on this committee, you're end of term. So do we need to replace you as a representative of the city? Or did I?
Yeah, please do. I'll pay you.
I'll make a motion to.
Oh, Rick.
Is that true? We need to get somebody from the city on there?
That means the end of the mayor's term.
Yeah, okay, so he's just done.
His elected
Shut
term.
up, Stephen. Shut up, Stephen. Shut up, Stephen.
So you get to
I
continue.
like what Rick said. Shut
You
up,
get to
Stephen.
continue to serve with dignity and grace.
Cut him off, please. Kill his microphone.
What was those last 2 words you said? Dignity and grace. What's wrong with you?
I think you blew that part.
That's a good one. That's a good one, Rick.
I'm gonna ask the commission's indulgence to postpone resolution 4 until we can have some further discussion on that. There may be a better way to handle this and more economical to us, if that meets with your approval.
I'm sorry. Say again.
The resolution of
Oh,
number
on
4.
Okay.
Would be okay?
Fine by me.
Item 5 is the code enforcement report, which you have in front of you. Ms. Lester.
Good afternoon, Mayor and Commissioners.
Hey, Bridget, I don't know if that's on or not.
It's probably because I'm so short.
There you go.
Sorry.
No.
You have before you the information for the month of May. We've had several things going on there, and we had 36 business licenses issued. We brought in $900 for that. We placed 10 liens for a total of $2,000. On file, we have 323 liens in our database, which totals $101,000. So we continually try to collect those. We mail out statements monthly with updated penalty and interest on those and do everything we can to collect those, but we still have a large amount of those liens on file. We issued 210 parking citations for a total of $4,260. We issued 72 notice of violations for a total of 232 inspections, violations, complaints for the month. The notice of violations you see in your packet this time are from the new system, the Comcate system that you approved a few months ago. So not only are we citing the code, we're putting that text in there to give the person that actual information as well, so they can read what's in the ordinance or the property maintenance code that they are in violation of. On June 1st through the 2nd, Tom and I attended the Kentucky League of Cities Alcohol and Beverage Control Summit in Hebron, Kentucky. Danville was instrumental in helping to put that summit together. We had 212 participants there. So from across the state, we had Representative Adam Cohen in attendance and Senator John Schickel, as well as the Commissioner of ABC and all the Distilled Spirits Administrator and the Malt Beverage Administrator and the General Counsel for ABC and the Kentucky League of Cities staff as well. So you'll see some of the information on that later on in the agenda about the alcohol stuff that we got into for House Bill 183. So I'll entertain any questions you might have.
Well, I have a kind of a general question, and unfortunately, I think I already may know the answer. But you take a structure here that's owned by a lady in Austin, Texas. Where do you go with that?
Well, we try to get that taken care of, but sometimes if we can't get the property owner to do it, that's where these liens come in. We end up mowing the property and putting a lien on the property. Depending on what the scenario is, Mayor, as to what we have to do. This one also addresses gutters. That's a problem. It's falling off the structure.
Okay, and at some point, I would assume somebody comes in, going to buy all these liens, and then is that correct?
They will have to pay the liens when they purchase the property. Yeah. We file those with the courthouse very diligently to make sure that those are there whenever anyone does a title search. And we've been working very hard on that recently to check all of those with the help of our city attorney, and my administrative assistant's been working very hard on that to check to make sure that the property owner that's on the lien matches what's on the face of the deed.
So they have to buy them at face value, correct?
They have to pay the penalty and interest as well.
And then it's on them to collect from that point. So they're
Whoever buys the property
buys
has to pay the
buys
liens.
the lien.
Yes, they pay for the lien.
I think the mayor's
I think
speaking
he's-
about two different things.
Yeah.
The city does not sell its maintenance lien taxes. Code enforcement lien taxes aren't sold like ad valorem taxes. So if you don't pay your county tax bill, they are sold every summer. It's coming up for any 2016 delinquent tax will be sold. I believe it's in August, and anybody can register to purchase those, and which accrue interest 12% annually. Then they can either receive payment or issue a foreclosure proceeding or start one, commence one, and then hope to collect it through that process. The city's liens are not sold via that auction process like ad valorem taxes.
Is there a reason why?
The statute allows the sale
I know the
of ad
statute.
valorem taxes. It doesn't allow you to sell. I mean, if there was a market for it, the state might allow that. But to this time, the only time the city collects them is either voluntary payment, or when the property is transferred, they would show in a title search, as Bridget noted, and they'd have to be paid then in order for title to be transferred.
Sounds like this is a legislative issue.
Well, I mean, in the last House bill, when we've done all these code enforcement changes, they gave city code liens super priority. So the legislative fix is in. There needs to be some time to implement them, but they even have priority over mortgage liens, so long as they are entered into the log system that the city recently purchased, and as they're placing them in there, they have priority over an individual's mortgage, the same priority that a tax bill does now. So that's a big change,
Yes.
and it's a strong. It makes the city's position come from negotiation a point of strength as opposed to just falling in line as your liens.
All that said, and I appreciate the clarification, when are we going to get that $100,000?
We're doing everything we can to collect it. Like I said, we send out the information. We try to make sure that it's recorded at the courthouse so that we get every penny that we can. But
The city's other option is to issue, the city can pursue foreclosure itself. So after a lien is on the property for over 12 months, then you can issue foreclosure proceedings yourself, and we've done those. We foreclosed our own liens before in some circumstances. Problem is the money has to be worth it, and in order to go through that process. But we have done that. There's a history of that.
Is that something we should look into a little bit more actively?
We have been doing that on condemned properties as opposed to properties with liens. So we've heard from the commission that your priority are the condemned structures as opposed to the ones that just maybe have code violations. But it's always a solution that's on the table.
Thank you.
Oh, I have a question.
I have
Sorry.
a question too.
Oh,
Okay.
good.
Sorry.
I thought I was the only one.
Ladies first.
Oh, thank you. Is this property on Lisa Avenue condemned? Because I don't think it is.
no, it's not on the list that you have in your packet.
So right now, it's just in violation.
It's just in violation.
But is this the first time?
I'd have to look back. I don't know. Each case is on its own merit without looking back.
So I guess, at what point do we condemn a property like this? Because it's obviously empty, right?
It's empty, yes. It would be a determination of the codes officer as to whether it met the criteria to be condemned or not.
So a certain number of complaints don't always merit condemning the property?
Correct. Yeah, it has to meet the criteria for it.
Go ahead, Rick.
Yeah, mine's more of a comment. You're coming before us monthly, right?
Yes.
Yeah. So I'm always amazed. I'm going to say it again. 36 business licenses issued. That's pretty darn good. I may have asked before because we keep seeing double-digit numbers, which really looks positive for our city. But and I'm pretty sure Paula might know too. What's the attrition rate? I mean, what's the net there? Because it looks positive. I love seeing it, but I'm sure there's some that are lost as well.
We do lose some, but I don't see a large exit of those. I don't have a number to give you, but we don't see a large amount of those businesses closing, but there
Yeah.
are some for
Yeah, you
for
probably
various
don't know.
reasons.
Paula probably does. It looks like a bright picture to me, but I certainly don't know the whole story.
Yeah, there's various reasons for those businesses. They may not be opening up a physical location. They may be here contracting to come in and do
Oh,
work
okay.
here. Vendors,
Okay.
if they're making income, any of those people would be required to have a license.
Okay. So this tells us we have a lot of activity going on, not
We do.
necessarily new businesses growing up. Okay.
Yes.
Yeah, good deal.
I want to ask a question about, on the front page, under inspection complaints, you say you've issued 3 noise permits? Mm-hmm. And my question is, are all 3 of those for this coming Saturday at 7 o'clock?
Those were already issued for May, but I don't know, but they could be, but I think they have a new one.
I think that one might be in June.
All right.
But they are in compliance, I understand.
Following the rules.
Don't show up around 7:30, be a lot of noise going on. Matt?
Anything else? Thank you, Bridget. Item 6, 311 West Main Street discussions. Mr. Scott.
Yes, sir, Mayor and Commission. I'm going to ask to also respond in part to this agenda item. First, let me just remind the Commission that on April 19th, the Architectural Heritage Board sent you a lengthy memo noting that over the past 5 years, for all the owners during that period of time, they had 20 requests to discuss and make improvements to the condition of 311 West Main Street. And they noted in their memo to you that they're concerned about the potential of losing other valuable historic buildings in the downtown historic area due to water damage and the condition and continued deterioration of that building. Now, since that time, the present owner of that building had retained an attorney who drafted a outline of the steps they were planning to take, although those were not terribly specific in terms of timeline, to mitigate damage and to clean out and address the issues of that property. I believe this morning we received a report from Rusty Cox, our county building inspector, regarding the condition of that building, and I think Bridget is prepared to share with you the results of the inspection of that building as of this date.
Yes, we checked with Rusty at the county, and he reported that he had contacted Mr. Hamlin. He had talked with him previously, but he contacted him again, and Mr. Hamlin reported they had hired a group to come in and clean out the first floor, and that the floor is clearly accessible from the front to the rear. The county building inspector asked for a plan of action. He cannot give a building permit until he gets a specified plan as to what's going to be going on in there and a timeline. Mr. Hamlin advised him that he's having the first floor sprayed to combat mold in the next few days, date unknown. He's planning to lay a construction floor down in order to facilitate more extensive work. He's planning to hot tar the roof as soon as weather and schedule permits. He plans to remove interior walls on the first floor that are not load-bearing. This can only occur, though, after a building permit has been issued. He also reported that part of the second floor directly under the third floor is highly deteriorated, but that the front section has no floor above, is in relatively good shape. The building inspector can only issue a building permit when he has a clear scope of work that is both required and optional, and so Mr. Hamlin's work must conform to the current building code. So he asked Mr. Hamlin to contact him preferably Thursday so that he could accompany him on a tour of the building, so that his plan of action could, he could figure that out and see if he was going to be in compliance with so he could issue a building permit. He will report back to us. I also talked to Dwayne Campbell, the county engineer, this morning about the water runoff in the back. We had initially in DAHB talked about that and talked to the county engineer once, and he checked it when it was raining a lot and said that water is not going towards their building. It's going towards their catch basin, and the water that's coming off the city area there is going into the 3rd Street lot. So the water is coming off of their building, and they need to put gutters back there to help that water problem. Unless, of course, if it's really, really bad rain, which could happen to any building, it might soak some up from the ground if the water's, too much there. So that's kind of where we are at this point, and we await your direction.
Any comments, questions? Anything further, Ron?
Well, I think after we learn of the meeting and the plan discussion on Thursday of this week, this, like our other code reports, will simply be a continued conversation at our next meeting regarding progress on that building.
Okay.
And do we have the right to push for some estimated, determined timeline for completion? How do we get to that understanding?
I don't know that I can give you a definitive answer on that. It's been quite a number of years with multiple owners, and we haven't produced that acceptable timeline yet, but I'm hopeful that this time we may. And that's all I can say at the present time. I mean, if you are unsatisfied with the specificity of the remediation plan or the lack of progress in meeting that plan, you could do as the Architectural Heritage Board recommended, and that is pursue the matter in court to levy civil fines against the owner of the building for noncompliance.
Well, the outline plan that we received looks promising, but I don't understand the degree of what it's going to take to put the building back in use. And so if we are moving toward that, then like all other projects, there should be some estimation about completion date. So in your meeting next Thursday, would you do us all a favor and try to have a discussion along those lines, that we're concerned about if it takes 2 years for this to get back in service, what are we really getting out of this deal?
Well, yes, I will attempt to reach that positive outcome. As was discussed tonight, before the building inspector can issue a building permit, there has to be specificity in terms of timeline and what will be done. And the indications are by the present owner through their attorney that they intend to put a repair in order on the roof. And so that would address water damage issues, at least initially. So I can't say more than that until we have that meeting and try to come up with that plan.
Thank you.
And let me just clarify, the meeting that's mentioned in here was the building inspector's meeting. So I'm not sure, Ron may have another meeting he wants to set up, but this meeting just addresses the building inspector meeting with Mr. Hamlin.
Well, we need something done.
Yes.
Yes, and that's what we've been asking for.
Well, and I guess I think it behooves us to ask at some point in the near future, you pick the date, we need some point in the near future a timeline.
Yeah.
What's going to be done by when?
Yeah.
It's not cast in stone. We understand contractors can say they'll be there one day and they've got something else. We got that. But we need something that says this is how this is going to proceed forward, and this is the timeline to do it.
And that's no different than what we would ask anyone to do in our downtown.
And if we can help in any way, I'm sure we're glad to do that.
Isn't there an expiration date on a building permit if and when it is issued?
There is an expiration date of certificates of appropriateness in historic districts that are 12 months from the date of issuance. But we're talking about two different things here too. As far as the timeline that you're requesting, the standard goes to reasonableness. And it matters not that it's a downtown property or a property anywhere within the corporate limits of the city of Danville. The requirement for the homeowner or property owner is the same. And that is if a property has been tagged with a condemned status, then the owner must present a certain scope of work that is reasonable and within a reasonable time frame. So what is reasonable is to be negotiated between the parties. And typically what has happened in these scenarios is the property owner has said, I understand I need to do these list of 10 things, and I'm going to achieve them by this date. And the city says, if you achieve those 10 things within this scope of time, then your condemnation status will be lifted. So it's a little bit of back and forth and settlement between the parties, but it's a necessary and good conversation to have so that both sides are clear of what the goals and objectives are and in what time frame they should be completed. So a timeline is both necessary, if not required, to be a reasonable outline of what needs to occur to relieve the condemnation status of any structure.
Okay?
Thank you.
You satisfied?
Yeah. I'd like to get 311 West Main off of our agendas.
Yeah. All right. Item 7 is the fiscal years 2017-2018 budget presentation. Let me, if I may, begin this with at least some framework of my thoughts. On February 3rd of this year, this commission, along with city staff, held a 6-hour retreat, and it was a planning session. And this was the first time in recent memory, if ever, that the city staff and commissioners took a hard look into the foreseeable future. From this retreat, we identified future needs and expenses from top to bottom. Issues such as maintenance, upgrades, replacement equipment, roads, sidewalks, streets, the cemeteries, stormwater projects, water issues such as line extensions, lift station upgrades, water storage tanks, cost to condemned properties, the list goes on and on. We identified hard needs, not wants, in the range, total range of between $30 and $40 million. This list is available to you anytime you want to see it. We would gladly share that with you. The city has essentially 5 ways to pay for improvements. They are, number 1, the alcohol revenue tax, number 2, municipal insurance premium tax, 3, property tax, 4, net profits tax, and 5, occupational license fee or payroll tax. And of these 5, and only 5 areas, the largest of these is the occupational license fee, which, as you see behind me, is 60% of total revenues.
I think that's the next slide. There it is.
Got it? With this large list of needs, again, needs, not wants, coupled with the city's limited income streams, as previously mentioned, this commission and staff have endeavored to weigh all pros and cons to the proposed budget. This commission has looked at many ways to squeeze the expense side of our needs. The areas are limited unless we want to cut city services, which we feel, and when I say cut city services, I mean cut city services in a significant and substantial way. We feel this is a step in the wrong direction. Clearly, in our revenue sources, the one that can impact the financial health of city government and the city of Danville as a whole is the payroll tax. You may have second slide, please. In other words, it's in all of our best interest to grow our local economy by adding jobs. I think Mr. Dexter was correct in his point on that. I'm sorry he's not here to hear the rest of our conversation. In a proactive move to address this need, the city, your city, for the past 2 budget cycles, has allocated funds to implement the services of a nationally recognized economic development analyst. In fact, the city paid about 80% of this cost, as it's clear to us that we have but 2 choices going forward: increase revenue from increased number of jobs, or raise taxes. Excuse me. Let's go to chart number 3, please. From the chart you can quickly see that the vast majority of the city's expenditures are a fixed cost nature. The balance, even if cut 50%, would barely cover the projected future cost increases. This situation would be different if we didn't need, not want, a safe fire station and a new hook and ladder truck. But as they say, it is what it is. And these expenditures are central. They are central to the main purpose of government and essential to providing a safe and livable community for businesses to operate, especially real estate. I wish Mr. Dexter were still here. I mentioned a moment ago that there are 2 ways to grow revenue: taxes or add jobs. This is precisely why your city led the effort to hire RKG to assist us in refocusing our economic development efforts. I'm confident this expenditure of funds, time, and manpower will pave a new path of prosperity for Danville and Boyle County. And unfortunately, to get there will take several years, not months. For us, as city commissioners, as city staff, our time of need for our citizens is now. Not months from now, not years from now, it's now. But let us be clear, at some point, a continuance of raising taxes begins to defeat our purpose. Our ultimate purpose is to grow our economy. The answer looking forward is the same answer when you look backward. Increase jobs. And not just any jobs, but high quality, high paying jobs. Challenge is clear. Thanks to RKG, our path is clear. I'm confident that the city's focus in the coming years on economic development will be sharp. We simply must have more businesses in our communities. I would add a significant note that the city allocated $50,000 to the expansion of BCTC. That is our effort to leverage other dollars, state dollars, to add a $1.3 million expansion to BCTC for the purpose of increasing our workforce, particularly in the area of robotics. I appreciate Paula Fowler's comments to the extent that she is expressing and representing her constituency. But I read from section 102.10.010 of the state statutes about the chamber. For the purpose of advertising and developing their natural resources and promoting the general welfare, better business methods, and civic conditions, a corporate body to be known as the Chamber of Commerce is authorized in cities of the home rule class. See, folks, it's easy, in my opinion, it's easy for people to come in and say, cut taxes. That's easy. I haven't heard anybody say how. I've heard some people say, well, you need to cut 10%. Cut 10% across the board. What if we went to the fire department and we said, hey, fire department, which is the fourth largest expenditure at 5.39%. Hey, fire department, guess what, guys? It's a new day. We're going to cut your salary 10%. Or you went to the police department, the number 3 largest expenditure at 7.31. And you said, hey, boys, guess what? Sorry about your luck. Got to take some money back. What's the outcome of that? Or let's talk about that small slice up there. We spent some money on 2 cemeteries. It's a total of $328,000. Sounds like a lot of money to me. That represents, you ready for this? That represents a little over 0.5% of our total budget. You want to cut that expenditure? What about our Community Arts Center and Museum? Want to cut that one? $78,000. Again, a big number to most everybody. It's a little over 1/10. I'm sorry, it's a little over, 1/10 of 1%. You want to cut codes, something we've just been talking about? There's $468,000. That's less than 1% of our budget. So the question, the question becomes, I guess there's 2 questions, in my opinion. The biggest question is, how do we get more jobs in here? The smaller question is, where do you cut? Now, to save everybody a lot of time, I know we've already talked about, Paula's identified the 80,000 on the CLG. I think we've already said in our revised budget, Ron, which you're going to talk about, I'm sure, we get that. We're going to do away without that. But does that move the needle? No. That's a gnat on this total situation. Obviously, you now know where I stand. I'm open to any suggestions. I've heard all the complaints. I feel your pain. It comes out of my pocket too. But give me some suggestions. Give us some suggestions. We're open to it. End of my comments. Thank you.
Mr. Mayor and Commission, if I may add a few comments in an overview fashion. We do have the proposed budget before us tonight, and it's been before us previously several times. And we're talking about addressing problems that have been identified in large part through several comprehensive studies. We've had the energy efficiency study that's taken a year and a half to go through as an audit of what we're now paying for obsolete equipment to heat and cool our buildings or to drive our water pumps or use in our public vehicles in terms of gas inefficiencies. And we have concluded, after extensive and exhaustive study, that to implement that will save us money. It's guaranteed to save us money, and I think, as I recall, about $500,000 over the lifetime of the project. But we have to invest money first in order to reap the benefits of those savings. In that particular instance, it's no different than any homeowner upgrading their heat and air system so they pay less on a monthly basis and achieve greater savings annually. We have to do that, or our taxpayers are going to continue to pay for that inefficiency, which we as a community do not like. That's one point. The second point, in terms of our fire station needs, we postponed that for many years and have come to the conclusion, and you've heard the report of 3 or 4 engineers and architects, that the building is falling down and it needs to be torn down and reconstructed to be a more efficient place for our essential fire services. Those are just 2 of the priority needs in the new budget. We've talked about need for economic development. We worked diligently and I would say many hours to get the USDA grant to Economic Development Act grant of over $900,000 to complete a $1.9 million total project that will improve water flow to our industries, to allow them to expand, to allow them to stay here rather than leaving, and to promote those jobs that we're desperately looking for in terms of higher paying jobs. It will also improve the water flow and safety of people in Perryville. It's part of the system we own, and they're not optimal now by a far stretch, and so we have needed infrastructure improvements. I mentioned the fact that we're no longer buying vehicles for our fleet. We're going to enter into a lease arrangement for those in order to be efficient and to save money. There are other things that I could speak about that we've spoke about before, but tonight you have before you a budget that we've spent a lot of time and effort over multiple years really coming to the conclusion on some of these projects that are now before us. I think there was a wise man who once said, "I'm concerned about the future because one day I hope to be there." Well, this is about both now and the future, and about the cost that we will be not paying as we move into the future to create those jobs, to save those dollars, and to be more efficient. Nothing is free. It does cost to make progress. So we're talking about some of these projects in our budget tonight. Now, you know, tonight is a good night because I hope it will be a time where our citizens can understand really the difficult choices that the City Commission has had to make or is in the process of still making, and that they understand the type and level of services that we're continuing that allow the businesses to thrive and prosper, and the required finances to make that possible. You know, we all need to seek to understand the point of view of the other. And I appreciated the comments that Mr. Dexter made tonight. I have some additional information I want to provide as I complete this budget overview on a couple of points he made. But I think we are inescapably where we need to be with this budget if we are going to address our realistic needs that we see. If we're going to turn a blind eye to those and not, we can't cut, we can delay, we cannot address those. But my question is, do you want to do that? And is that action in the best immediate or short or long-term future for Danville and its citizens? I would say that the proposed budget tonight is that best path forward. We've talked already with the graphs and in your packet tonight, and by the way, all of this will be online tonight or tomorrow so that citizens can also see it. We've talked about our various departmental budgets, and I won't repeat all of that necessarily. The proposed budget for all funds next year projects total resources of $56,640,456, total appropriations of $52,396,832, and total reserves of $4,243,624. Total reserves, or
Yeah, say that because every now and then you'll hear somebody say, well, city's broke. Say that number again, please.
well, our projected total reserves at the end of next fiscal year, after implementing revenue increases, would result in total reserves of $4,243,624 if all comes out as anticipated.
And
I would-
somebody's then going to say, why don't you take and spend that money first? We want to educate them on our policy?
Well, we do have a policy of maintaining an appropriate reserve, no different than a household would, to meet emergency situations. And if we had an unfortunate event such as a tornado or an ice storm or other calamity that in large proportion struck our community, we need to have resources to hire contractors to address those emergency conditions. And so that's the policy, longstanding, of the City Commission in terms of holding reserves.
And that also results in overtime for our first responders, is that correct, usually?
Usually does. We have higher costs, certainly when there are emergency situations. We've talked about continuing our basic services next year, and I want to enumerate all of those, but those are continued, proposed to be continued to be provided. We've had the discussion about the desire in this community of increasing medical dispatch services to aid in the likelihood that those having cardiac arrest or other life-threatening events would arrive at the hospital in a better condition to survive than has been the case in our past history. The county has said that they are in favor of supporting that to the amount of $105,000. The total projected cost to implement that is roughly $300,000. That's proposed in this budget if we can work out the details with the county to put that into place. It won't be immediate, but it may be in the spring of next year as we work towards hiring and getting new equipment and staffing up to meet the emergency situations of our citizens, that we can add that as a service. The discussion has occurred about not wishing to incur the $80,000 in maximum cost. That's not a salary cost, but a maximum cost for maintaining our COG, historic preservation status. We do believe there's another way to go with that at much lesser cost. I would say, and I'll just say outright, that our new Executive Director of Planning and Zoning has suggested that perhaps they can incorporate that as part of their service and provide it to the city in a 5-day work week. And the recommendation, as you will recall, from the Heritage Council was to have more formalized reports and finding of fact presented to our Architectural Heritage Commission, similar to what a Planning and Zoning Commission does in their bodies. I think that body is well skilled in reaching those findings of fact after hearing testimony, and would also incorporate what has been observed by many over the past several years, incorporate an area into planning and zoning of historic preservation. We've had buildings torn down. We've not had looking forward in terms of preservation efforts. It makes sense to integrate that function within that department if, in fact, we can do so, retain our COG status, and be more sensitive about historic preservation. So we've talked about our city-county partnerships, about our continued emphasis in funding economic development partnership at the existing level of $145,000, with some of that money being prioritized for marketing expense, as well as adding, proposed in the new budget, is an additional $40,000, which is intended as a matching grant program if the county or if the EDP or other private investors step up to implement the RKG studies. So we're providing that incentive and that effort to improve our operations. We're continuing to fund Parks and Recreation next year at the amount they requested. I believe it's $238,000. We're providing certain equipment and also proposing to provide additional paving in the parking lot there of $75,000, with the premise that it's cheaper to do that now when paving costs are so low, rather than to defer it until a future point in time. We have funded planning and zoning at the amount they requested, and also funded our 1/2 of the additional amount it would take for them to move to a 5-day work week. So we've met our partnership obligations, if you will. We closely reviewed this time through a microscope, I think more closely than any time I've been associated with the city, the request of community services. We have generally reduced those. The mayor mentioned that we funded a new request from Bluegrass Community Technical College of $50,000. And absent that increase, I think most other agency requests were decreased, and new agencies that serve the poor, some of those were reduced, but all of them are funded at $5,000 each.
What was the, Ron, in aggregate, what was the reduction?
I'm recalling, but I'm not sure it's precisely correct, that it was about a 7% reduction overall, but I'm not sure that holds if you include the $50,000 additional for.
No, take that out. We're
Bluegrass.
talking about the other, yeah.
So the belt has been tightened there, and capital improvements. This represents, and I've mentioned 2 or 3 of the large projects that have been identified in some cases over a prolonged period of time that are addressed in the next budget. That's the largest, single largest area of new expenditures, capital improvements. It's 23% of the total budget of the general fund. Now, they're detailed in the budget on page 42, when the audience can look at that in their review online. But again, it's to implement the energy efficiency improvements, to continue the rebuilding of parks and construction of new trails. In the general fund and stormwater fund, the budgets allow for the rebuilding of the Lexington Avenue Park in front of the new water treatment plant. The general fund budget allows for the new Henson Trail to be completed. Fire Station 1 is funded in part related to site preparation and beginning construction of the new fire station on Main Street, as well as acquisition of a new fire hook and ladder truck. We'll begin next fiscal year. The general fund budget also provides for lease or purchase of equipment needed by various departments. I mentioned the economic development enhancement at Corporate Drive in Perryville, $1.9 million, using that $900,000 EDA grant, which, by the way, our congressmen say is the largest single grant they've ever seen awarded to anyone, was that single amount of $900,000 plus to the city of Danville for that project. And the utility fund also includes funding to wrap up the completion of the water treatment improvement plant. Now, to fund all of these efforts, we can't do that in a day and increase taxes on everyone at one time, nor should we to do that. Bond issues are for 20 or 30 years, but we have to have money to pay back the debt when we receive bond proceeds. We're planning a bond issue in the amount of $10 million and is recommended to be issued by the city in calendar year 2017 to fund the water line improvements associated with that EDA grant and our energy efficiency projects. That's $10 million. To address a portion of the cost, and this is only a portion of the cost associated with the construction of the new Main Street Fire Station and purchase of a new ladder truck, a bond issue, and the approximate amount of $7.5 million is planned and recommended to be issued early in the calendar year of 2018. These are all within our next fiscal year, but they're in two separate calendar years in order to take advantage of the bank qualified loan arrangements, which limit you annually to calendar year to $10 million per total issuance. So this sets out a plan, and I would be the first to say it is a big plan. It's a ambitious plan, but it's a necessary plan if we're going to, one, meet the needs of our corporate drive citizens and our industry that generates revenue for our community and allows people to move and work here. If we're going to address the inefficiencies that exist within our old equipment, if we're going, that's both mobile and fixed, and if we're going to address the safety needs of our citizens through a fire station that will house our first responders and have adequate equipment for them to respond. All of these things, and our trails, you know, our parks that we're adding out at Millennium Park, not Millennium Park, the water treatment plant rather. All of these things enhance our quality of life. It makes people want to move here. It makes people want to stay here. It generates an environment that is conducive to a quality community, a safe community, a livable community. And I don't know of any of those things that I have mentioned that you would be able to deduct or subtract or not do that would still have the positive overall outcome that is desired. So I respectfully urge all of you, I urge you to vote for this budget. It is a responsible act, and it is one that will benefit current and future residents of Danville. Now, with regard to some of the information presented tonight, I want to respond briefly to a little of that. People are entitled to their opinions, but as the saying goes, they're not entitled to their own facts. So I want to provide just a correction or two on a couple of matters. And I can understand why errors might occur as people may scramble to put together a response to something they don't think is in their best interest or possibly in the interest of the community. But with regard to the letter that you have received from Mr. Dexter, our good friend, that first paragraph talks, and it's mostly correct in the first paragraph, but it points to the 20 cents tax on each vehicle. That is, in fact, true that we did that a couple of years ago in terms of levying that, but we were the only city in the state that we could find after going through the state tax administrator rolls that hadn't had that tax in place for many years. we were the only one that we could find that didn't levy the tax. Why that occurred, I don't know, but it was an oversight. We needed the revenue, we corrected that. The information presented about the insurance premium policy tax being increased from 6.3% to 9.9%. That is not correct. I invite you to go to the Department of Insurance webpage, which I did today. We increased our rate from 6% to a rate of 8%, which was the average rate in place among Kentucky communities at the time we took that action 2 years ago. So the rate, the magnitude of the increase is less than what is represented. And that's a fact easily verifiable in the Department of Insurance webpage. Now, with regard to our community's determination of what priorities we have, people have different viewpoints about that. And, you know, some people may say, do this or don't do that. It's the commission's duty to sift through that, to hear, to ask questions, to respond, and ultimately make a decision. Now, Mr. Dexter made the point, it seems strange to include a line item in the budget to cover $45,000 of funding cuts that Boyle County may or may not do with regard to 911. In fact, that is kind of strange in a sense, but what's missing is the understanding that Danville has the responsibility for administering the 911 program and must fund that irrespective of what it gets from the county in any given year. And it's also maybe time to be reminded that Boyle County has accumulated a reserve of funds that are earmarked for the 911 center in the magnitude of $750,000. Those could be used to pay for staff salaries or capital equipment. But they have held on to that money, and it's a good thing in a sense in terms of preparing for the next equipment purchase time. Our equipment is almost 20 years old. As we've said before, it's obsolete. You can't hardly find parts for it. So we're approaching a point of unreliability and safety issues with regard to the functioning of the 911 center. So we must replace that equipment. We must get that money from the county, and I believe they will, as they're required to by law, provide that to us. But we have to have money to continue operations regardless of whether other cities or other users of that system pay their share or not. Some do, some don't. I've mentioned the fact that, you know, the $25,000, I said $75,000 earlier, but $25,000 Parks and Recreation for resurfacing at Millennium Park maybe could be pushed back. Again, this is an opportune time to do that at kind of bargain basement prices. That's a judgment call, and people have different views on that. Now, let's talk about competitiveness of our tax rates and those of other communities, just briefly. I'm not going to go into great depth on this. I could go probably for an hour quite easily. Just the ones that were mentioned. Well, first of all, in terms of occupational net profits tax, of all those cities that levy that, almost invariably, they levy them at the same rate on both on occupational taxes and net profit taxes. In Danville, we already give businesses a break in that they get a 0.25% of 1% break lower than what is commonly charged throughout Kentucky. And again, this information is available. You can check that out. 3 cities were mentioned here in terms of payroll tax and net profits tax. Harrodsburg being suggested at 1% as being much lower than Danville's. That's true as far as it goes. What's not said is that Harrodsburg has a 10% insurance premium tax compared to Danville's 8%, and Harrodsburg taxes all lines, including health insurance, which Danville does not. Harrodsburg also has the tax that Danville is not authorized to have, and that's a 3% restaurant tax. So they are generating money through the difficult choice of those 5 choices, what cards can they play, what cards can they use?
And that restaurant tax for them is about $700,000, I'm told.
It's a large amount, and those cities that have it have the authority to use it, generally do, at varying rates, but it's in their mix that Danville doesn't have. So we do what we need to do based on the options that we have.
And that restaurant tax money has to go to economic development.
Well,
It doesn't?
under the proposed amendment, it would have to, now it goes to the CPB for promotion, actually. And they may rebate some of it to the city, but it's mostly for promotion of businesses. Let's talk about Versailles at 1.5%. I would say the information presented is correct as far as it goes. They also have a 9% insurance premium tax on all lines, including health. Paris at 1.5%, they also have a 10% insurance premium tax on all lines. So you can see, I'm not trying to be argumentative here, I'm just trying to be factual in terms of the difficulties that communities struggle in terms of coming up with that total mix of revenue that best suits their communities. You know, I would be the first to say, you know, maybe we could do less in net profits, and although we're already given a 1/4% break to companies, but you know, we might be able to do something there and increase the insurance premium tax from 8 to 10%, for example. That would be something that could be possible. That would have a bigger dollar effect on all property owners and businesses in Danville, were you to do that, than to simply increase, as has been recommended, increase in the net profits and occupational license tax. One final comment about net profits. The current rate is 1.25%. That means that some business making $100,000 free and clear net of expense is paying to Danville for the privilege of operating in the city the annual amount of $1,250 per $100,000 that they make. If you increase that by the amount recommended, they would be paying, is that $1,000 and $1,500? It's $1,500. They pay another $250 is what we're talking about here in terms of being objectionable to a business that is clearing $100,000 in our community. And I would ask you, as a business friendly community where we charge businesses a business license tax of $25, and it's almost a lifetime grant of authority to operate in our community, is $250 more too much to ask for a benefit of those communities that prosper in our community, when you consider that their prosperity depends upon the provision of a safe community and all of the services that Danville provides. And a final point, if I may, simply because of my earlier life as a sociology major, I did lots of studies, and I would offer the opinion that while the results obtained by that one-day survey demonstrate a preponderance of those object to the way that the question was asked, I would ask if the question was framed correctly. If businesses had been asked, do you wish to pay a little bit more to continue to enjoy the quality of services provided, or to address fire or other needs in the new budget, I bet you would have got a complete reversal of the result of that survey. And I would also offer the opinion that a 9% return is not a significant return of all members of the chamber.
Which you segued into my comments, because I read the responses today from the chamber survey. And instead of looking for the negative, I looked for the positive. And I saw several responses that said, I'm okay with the tax increase as long as it is spent specifically for certain things, or as long as there is a plan, basically. And that is what we have laid out. Shall I continue?
You have the floor.
So, let's see. Let's just go down the line. Planning and zoning. I would like to see us have more communication with planning and zoning like we have with codes. I would love to see a monthly report similar to what codes has given us. And because our new director, which I have not met yet, by the way, because our new director has some planning credentials and was a city planner, is my understanding. Just because we put this increase in the budget does not necessarily mean we are going to actually spend it. So what I propose about planning and zoning is we are already $10,000 over what the county gives them, and the county has said they are not increasing their funding. With that $10,000 more that we already give, plus the fact that our new director is not getting paid as much as our outgoing director, I'm not sure how much that is, but it's probably about another $10,000. And their fees that we've discussed that are fairly high, I don't think we should increase their funding at this time until we have a clear plan about how this director is going to operate. And I think we should discuss that with that director. And preservation is part of planning. And if we focus or somewhat focus on preservation under planning and zoning, that could be a countywide effort, which is another thing that the Heritage Council recommended, because a lot of our historical properties are in the county, and we have already lost some, and we are continuing to see the decline of those properties. And why exactly are we trying to hold on to the CLG status when it doesn't really seem to be worth it? I mean, you don't necessarily have to answer that, Ron. That's just a that's just a question. I mean, are we just holding on to that for prestige? It just doesn't seem to be worth it. Even if we go this route with planning and zoning, I mean, does someone think that the sky is going to open up with some money in the future? Because at one point it was probably worth it, but I hear from a lot of people that have knowledge about that it's really not worth it anymore. And unless we think there's more money coming down the pipeline, it's really just not worth it. And we're going to continue our preservation efforts whether we are CLG certified or not. Let's see, the $50,000 to Bluegrass Community Technical College. I agree with Commissioner Cottle. He had said before that he considered that economic development, and I do too. And as far as our agencies, my recommendation was to decrease them 20 to 25% every year for the next 3 or 4 years, and not add any new ones. And I think that's all for the moment. But again, like the mayor said, even if we cut these, 1% and less expenses, that's just a drop in the bucket. And we can cut that, but if you look at the complete budget of each department, every single one of our departments came in at budget or with a surplus. That means that we really cannot cut anymore as far as each individual department is concerned. Okay, I think that's it really this time.
Any other comments or a motion?
No, I'd be glad to jump on the train here. A few comments that I was thinking about, and maybe lightly related to taxes, but just kind of a review of where we've been. And you know, you look at our budget, and the highest thing there is utilities. So we've made a good move. The city manager has, and we've approved it to move on with Harshaw Train and try to bring that part of our budget down. So we can't deny that that's probably a good expense, or we shouldn't deny that. And then you look at the second highest one, which is general fund capital. And some of those areas we're winning in, so you hate to back off on that. And that's, a lot of those are related to not only the utility, but quality of life. And we've seen, and I've said this at last meeting, we're winning when it comes to tourism. We're not so much winning when it comes to industrial development until we get the facts, which are starting to come out now on retention and so forth. You certainly don't want to back up there as well. And then you go to the third highest budget item, which is the police department. When this city commission, as it exists today, 2.5 years ago, came to being, we talked about retention in the police department, and the why they didn't stay. Some of it was pay, some of it was work hours. We've worked pretty hard to get them up to full staff. I think we're doing a lot better with that. And so that took money, and then we had to do a little bit of a tax increase to get there, but we're trying to make this a better community, and sometimes it takes that to get it done. You go to the fourth highest thing on our total budget, that's the fire department. That's been talked about. You know, our main station is falling down, and I don't want anybody to take that literally, but it's could be in better shape and like replaced. So that's an expenditure we have to deal with in some regards. So I just kind of wanted to go over that because I think that we've been working hard with some big elephants in front of us that we've had to kind of take on. I do question, though, that at some point you would hope that, and I understand we have to spend money first, but I think we're going to get some returns when Harshaw Train gets into their work and we start saving money. So that'll come back to us. We hope that we're going to get some returns that this effort and spent money on the EDP and the reorganization starts reaping some benefits. So, you know, in saying that, you're kind of like, oh, maybe we shouldn't raise the taxes quite this high because we hope that we're going to get some return, but we don't know when. That's what's kind of the unknown, right? You did address some of my other things, so I appreciate that. Some of these communities that we're being compared to for occupational license taxes and et cetera do have the luxury of a restaurant tax, even though that money is pointed in a certain area. That means they can use their money for other areas, and so I think we need to look at the whole picture. So you brought up a question. I'll kind of get away from this. Educate me a little bit more. You said that we maybe could go to 0.25% less on the occupational income tax if we looked at the insurance premium tax. Maybe you can give me a little education on that, because other communities seem to have it pretty high and are fulfilling their budget by looking at that tax.
What I actually said, Commissioner, was that the net profits tax might not be increased as recommended if we increased the municipal insurance premium tax.
Okay.
It would take a substantial amount of adjustment to the insurance premium tax to equal that 0.5% in occupational tax.
Okay.
Currently, for example, at our 8% rate, we get $1,793,000 from the 8% municipal insurance premium tax. In the net profits amount in the new budget, we get $1,078,000, of which about $300,000 is from the proposed increase. So if you did not increase the net profits by 0.25%, you would reduce that $300,000 projected to $150,000. But as our occupational license fee is our #1 revenue source, generating $7.8 million in the new budget, you would have to substantially increase the insurance premium tax to offset any reduction in the proposed.
Okay, thank you. So I'm going to sit aside. I appreciate hearing from my other junior commissioner, equal commissioner, Denise Terry. We've been here for 2.5 years. But I hope that our senior commissioners will have some comments before we move on to the next agenda item, because I'd really like to hear their comments. They've been here for a while.
I don't know who's senior or you. Doesn't matter, does it?
Depends on if you're talking about age or service, right?
That's true. I've struggled with this budget, as I've mentioned before, and some things that these are going to kind of be random thoughts, I guess, but I guess I've wondered, what if we couldn't raise the occupational and net profits tax a full half? What if we could go a quarter? Or what if we were mandated that that's all we could do? I still think we could probably come up with a good, diverse and comprehensive budget that would suit our needs. So I am afraid a little bit of that tipping point that we mentioned. Are we getting to the point when we're making our big push for economic development? Are we going to price ourselves out of the market? I don't know that we are or aren't, but it's something that I think we need to consider. And also, just this, me personally, a couple years ago when we raised taxes, I guess I kind of made a deal with citizens of Danville that it would last longer than 2 or 3 years. And so I think that it's incumbent upon us to try to make that go a little further, if at all possible. The other things, like, again, 2 years from now, what are we going to do then if we need more revenue? We can't keep going back to the taxpayer. I know we've talked about economic development. That takes time. What if the timing doesn't work out? I think there's a point where you can't go back to the same well all the time. And then other things are minor, like I would be a little wary of starting an EMD with the county until we got something in writing, just because we've had some issues with that. And so I would wait until all that was in order before we embarked on that. I like the idea. I think it's great, but I think it needs to be vetted and some of the particulars worked out before we jump in. So let's see if there's anything else here. I guess that's it. I just don't know. I guess I'm trying to get straight in my mind if we've done all that we can getting up to this point. And that's what I'm struggling with and continue to struggle with. So I'll turn it over to the senior of seniors for the final word.
First of all, I just want to thank Danville and Boyle County citizens who have made comments to us in support or in opposition to what we're discussing. Then I'd like to thank all of my commissioners and the mayor for their comments and their insights. And then I'm going to take privilege, Mr. Mayor, and I'm going to make a motion on item number 9. And that is that I move that we approve the first reading of ordinance 1895, the fiscal year 2017-218 annual budget as presented.
Motion's been made by Commissioner Atkins. Is there a second to that?
I'll second that.
Second by Commissioner Terry. I guess we are now in discussion according to Robert's Rules of Order.
Well, I did have a couple more points.
Please
Sorry.
continue.
Sorry.
CERT is right around the corner.
That's right. So in regards to the fire station, I was unable to actually attend that meeting, but I did get the information that was presented that day. And like the mayor, I was embarrassed at the conditions we had allowed our first responders to live in. You know, our firefighters live there for 24 hours at a time. And I promise you, when you call 911, you're going to want someone to instruct you on what to do while those first responders are on their way. And you would want those first responders to be well rested and well prepared and well equipped to save your loved one that you are standing by to call 911. And the energy audit. When the energy audit was first brought up, I just thought we were going to change light bulbs, and that was it. However, the two gentlemen from Hershaw Train took us to Fort Knox and showed us what an energy audit looks like. And it is way more extensive than you can even imagine. It is not just changing light bulbs. But what I liken it to now that I know what an energy audit is I kind of had an epiphany the other day. I saw one of KU's billboards where they'll give you $50 for your old refrigerator. So you may have to spend $1,000 or more for a refrigerator, a new refrigerator, and they're going to give you $50. That's going to offset your cost, $50. But when you look at your electric bill, you are going to see over time how much you save on your electric bill, because it costs a lot more to run your 50 or 30 or 20-year-old refrigerator than the new high energy efficient ones that you get in return. And then as far as taxes, we now have a clear plan for economic development, and I believe that this commission is going to hold those people accountable, and we are those people also. But this group that has worked together to develop this plan, we are going to hold to that plan and hold the people to the plan. And now that we have a clear plan, I don't think we're going to have to raise taxes. I think those jobs are going to come, but they're not going to come overnight. And we're all going to have to be patient, and we're all going to have to work together in the same boat, rowing in the same direction. I think I'm really done this time.
Well, and if I can follow up on your comments, one of the ironic situations here, or conundrum, if you will, is clearly, without a doubt, if RKG said nothing else, they said this: the more you fund economic development, the more success you will have. If you can't fund economic development, if we can't fund economic development, then we need to scale back our expectations or right size our expectations according to how much we fund economic development. So which comes first, the chicken or the egg here? Well, according to RKG, Kyle Talente, if we're going to make economic development what we'd all like it to be, it's going to need to be significantly more as a community, not just us, but as a community, more than what we give. Interestingly, that Mr. Dexter brings us this article, because this article needs to go not to us, it needs to go
Economic development.
to economic development people, which says there's kind of a disconnect here that still exists.
If we ever pass the first reading and then move to a second reading, there's about a 2-week gap before that is to take place. And I'm already prepared for a third meeting this month to get this done between now and 1st of July. So I'm trying to push us forward because we got this next item that we need to push forward as well. But I see the budget, because times are tough, as a working budget. And that a lot of these major things that we are concerned about and the community is concerned about, we're not going to move forward on those things without a lot of discussion. They're in the budget as possibilities, but if we don't raise the revenue, they're not going to happen anyway. And if we don't have the fortitude when the time comes forward with staff to approve some of these things, again, they're not going to happen. So I'd like to call for the question at hand and move us forward.
Question has been called. Is there a second to that question?
I'll second the question.
Question has been seconded. Ready for the vote? All in favor of the motion as presented signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, like sign.
No.
Motion. Oop, I'm sorry. I overlooked you.
That's all right. It happens all the time.
You didn't talk about that.
No, that's what Elaine said.
You ain't gotta do the-
He didn't get to talk.
you ain't gotta
Is
do
that
the
where
ordinance,
you-
then, eh? Steve, you gotta still do the.
Yeah, that was just.
Roll call.
Let's do a roll
And
call.
Let's do a roll call.
Is this 1894 or 95?
What?
Number 8.
95.
That's what I thought.
Not been addressed on your agenda.
Yeah, I said 95, yeah. This is just the budget, yeah.
Is there a reason we're doing that
Because we didn't
backward?
talk about
No,
it.
we just
I
kind of
just asked
morphed
permission.
into it. I don't
Okay.
want. So we've got a motion on ordinance 1895. That motion has been debated. Question has been called. Roll call, please.
Commissioner Atkins,
Yes.
Commissioner Terry,
Yes.
Mayor Paris,
Yes.
Commissioner Cottle,
No.
Commissioner Sayers.
Yes.
Item 9 is the first reading of ordinance 1895 on the annual budget.
I thought that's what
Thought
we
we
just
just
did.
did that one.
Well, I thought we just did the occupational net profits.
No.
No, we did
we
95.
Yeah.
That's why I said we did it backwards.
Yeah.
Okay.
I'm sorry to confuse you, but
Yeah, well, it's easy. Moving right along, city manager report.
We got to do 1894.
Now you have got me thoroughly confused. Which
Number-
one do you want?
Number 8 was skipped on the agenda.
Right?
You went from the budget report or presentation
Okay.
straight to the motion to
Well,
approve the budget,
I
but
thought we
the
did the tax.
tax
We haven't
increase
done the tax
ordinance
yet.
has not yet been discussed.
Well,
debated,
let's
or
do
approved.
that.
ready for a motion?
Ready for a motion?
I move passing of the first reading of ordinance 1894, the occupational fee and net profits tax ordinance as presented.
Thank you, Commissioner Atkins. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you, Commissioner Cardle. We're in discussion. Seeing none.
We should state for the record, since this is the first reading, that the reading would approve an increase of the payroll tax from 1.5% to 2%, and the net profits from 1.25% to 1.75%.
Any discussion? Seeing none, Chair will call the question. All in favor of the first reading of ordinance 1890?
Do roll call.
Roll call.
Excuse me, roll call, 1894.
Commissioner Terry,
Yes.
Mayor Paris,
Yes.
Commissioner Cottle,
No.
Commissioner Sayers,
Yes.
Commissioner Atkins.
Yes.
All right, now we're ready for item 10.
I have just one additional thing to bring to the city commission's attention under my report and also for our citizens' information. Our City of Danville contract with Republic Services for solid waste collection and recycling services has the stipulation that there can be a price increase annually based on the Bureau of Labor Statistics Consumer Price Index. That amount for The year in question is an adjustment of 2.381%, again, 2.381%. That means effective July 1, 2017, residential trash collection monthly cost will go from the current rate of $8.21 to the new rate of $8.41, a 20-cent increase monthly. Commercial trash will go from the current rate of $19.34 to the new rate of $19.80. And recycling fee will go from the current rate of $2.91 to the new rate of $2.98. This is just a contractual for your information and the public information.
I know for a fact that that's really cheap. I know
Well,
people who pay twice that.
I'll tell you how cheap it is. The city, us, is subsidizing that for about $1 million.
Well, when we had our conversation on that, I was confused in terms of the total cost of the contract is about $1 million and flows in from all the money we get, and we actually expend $1 million during the year for that service. The city actually is obligated by contract to pay the difference between what is collected, and if we've got someone who manages to escape us in paying their fees, we have to make the contractor whole. That amount varies, but the total cost of the service is about $1 million. Our additional absorption of uncollected amounts that the company bills may be in the magnitude of $40,000 or $50,000, give or take a year.
I gladly stand corrected. Thank you.
That's uncollected, that amount?
Yes.
Wow, that's a little higher than I thought it would be.
Mr.
yeah.
Scott, would you repeat those three numbers for us?
Yes, the residential trash service currently is $8.21. The new rate effective July 1 is $8.41. The commercial trash currently is $19.34, and that's, of course, collected more frequently than residential trash. The new rate is $19.80. I think commercial trash is collected weekly or twice weekly, or daily, actually. The recycling.
Downtown it's daily.
Daily, it's downtown. Recycling, $2.91 currently, going to $2.98 July 1.
So if my math is right, it's 11, excuse me, it's $11.39 per month for citizens for the garbage and the recycling. Wow.
I would agree that's a great bargain in terms of cost.
Wow. You get trash 4 times per month, and recycling twice. Huh?
That's the only item I wanted to mention tonight, Mayor and Commission.
Any questions for Mr. Scott? Seeing none, we'll move right on.
Let me say something. I'd like to say something to Mr. Scott. Thanks for all the assistance. I guess I should say all the explanations you've given us throughout this budget process. This has been the most confusing time, but yet I feel like I've been away from Danville, but yet I've been able to stay very, very informed because of your communication. So I want to say thanks for keeping us informed about the process.
Thank you.
We are in the section called Hear the Public on any subject that you would like to address, as long as it's moral and come on, Wilma. Let's let Wilma go first. Mr. Jeffries, that's all right.
First, I want to recognize, is this on? Yeah. I want to recognize how difficult it is for our city commission and our city manager to develop a budget and to present it to us. And we all appreciate the difficulty of that. I also want to indicate how difficult it is for any of us to get up here and speak at the microphone. The reason we do that is because we care about the community. If it were an easy thing to get up here, more people would be talking. When the mayor made his presentation, the tone appeared to be defensive. You may not have meant it that way, but it came across to the public that way. And I don't see a reason, I didn't see anyone making comments inappropriately. I mean, I felt that the public was making appropriate comments, whether they were things that the commission agreed with or not, but I think they made appropriate comments, and they have in the last few weeks. The mayor indicated that the increase, the proposed tax increase, is for essential services. I don't think any citizens question that. You mentioned the fire station. I haven't heard anybody say anything but we have to have a new fire station. So I don't believe there might be one person, but generally, certainly the public wants a new fire station. They want a safe place for our fire personnel to be. They want an efficient place. They want a new place. So I don't think that's a problem. You also brought up the architectural heritage preservationist position, and you said, and that has been under some controversy, and I'm glad to see that it's not in the budget at this point. You said that the expenditure for that would be the size of a gnat on the budget, which we all understand. I think the reason we picked that up is because that appears to be a non-essential service, a non-essential expenditure. So we're wondering if that's something we can see very easily as something we do not feel as an essential expenditure. Are there other things? So I believe we are using that as a symbol of things that could be eliminated from the budget. I believe that the public, and you may have this, but I believe the public would benefit from the commission giving us, showing us a list of priorities in funding. I would assume at the top of a priority list of such would be the safety of our citizens, for example, and it would go down from there. And as you indicated, there'd be a focus on economic development too. So I think we're more concerned about what appears to be not haphazard, and not casual, but an undetermined way that you set priorities for spending our taxpayers' money. So we would probably benefit from, if you have such a thing, from where you would start, what you would fund first. That would probably be safety of the citizens, I would assume, and going down from that. So I believe that maybe it's a communication problem, but I do appreciate all of the people that have talked about the concerns over tax increase and items in the budget, and I do appreciate all the work that you have done.
Thank you. Mr. Jeffries.
You're all now ready for the country part of the showcase.
Don't come up here dumb as a fox now.
I want to thank you all for hearing me, and while I'm doing that, I would like to pass around some photographs and some letters. Oh, you can. My name is William Jeffries, Jr. I live at 428 Longview. I have a problem that I need the city's help on. There's a vacant lot next to where I live, and I have talked with Officer Broach more than 4 times, and I've talked with his boss once. I'm trying to get something done about the wild bushes that have grown up, and also a dead tree. The dead tree has caused the roots to grow up to be 3 inches round, I don't know. They spread over on my side of the property to where that it is 9 feet from my sidewalk on the sidewalk. I was told that nothing else could be done on about the 5th call to Officer Broach. And he never told me that, so I was waiting for the property owners to take care of it, but they're not. And I was also told that they can only enforce the grass being, what, 18 inches, I believe it is? If you look at those photographs, the grass around that down tree is 3 to 4 feet high. The Humane Society, they have graciously let me have traps to catch wild animals. I've caught somewhere between 8 and 10 feral cats. I mean, these cats are wild. There's no collar, they're nobody's, except for the people that's feeding them in the neighborhood, which is wrong. I've caught other animals. I've been accosted, and my dog's been accosted by a groundhog and a feral cat. Luckily, I had a stick within reach. I didn't hurt the animal, but I let him know that I would have hit him. One night, I don't smoke in the house. I do smoke. I know it's bad, but I do smoke. I go outside. One night around 10 o'clock, I was sitting out there smoking a cigarette, had the porch light on. No, actually, I had it off. Let me rephrase that. Because the bugs eat you alive. When they're only 9 foot from your, or well, say 12 foot from my chair, a young man come down through there, and I didn't notice him until he was close to me and Mr. Sears. He was highly intoxicated to the point to where he said, "Don't shoot me, don't shoot me." I said, "I won't if you won't give me, if you, you don't give me an excuse." 2 hours later, the Danville police force locked him up on the other side of the vacant lot. I don't know the man's name. I don't know who the officers were that came and picked him up, but I did recognize the red shirt that was up on me before I had a chance to, okay, well, I need to reach for this, or I need to reach in my pocket for that. It's a dangerous situation. I have other pictures on my phone of other parts of the property that actually needs to be fixed also. But right now, I'm just concerned about me. If you have any questions, I know I'm rambling. I can answer them to the best of my ability. If not, I would appreciate some help.
Mr. Scott, what can we do here?
So noted. We'll review the matter.
Okay.
What was that?
Cavalry's on the way.
Cavalry's on the way.
Yeah. How's that?
Thank you all very much. Oh, I need to get my, I don't need them.
Anyone else? Thank you, Billy. Good to see you again, bud. Long time. Let's not wait another 40 years, what you say. Mm-hmm.
Thank you, sir.
Anyone else? Going once, going twice? Moving on into commissioner comments.
I'll start.
Throw me off.
I know, I beat Rick to it. On May the 20th, the mayor and I had the privilege of attending the birthday party for our oldest living veteran.
Yeah.
He turned 101. His name is Walter Jeteau, I believe is how you say that.
Yep.
And he actually is the oldest living veteran in Kentucky and the third oldest, I believe, in the country.
Wow.
And or maybe the third oldest Marine, maybe. I don't know. Anyway, he was a Marine. I received the nicest thank you note from his daughter for attending that ceremony, and actually it's next door to where I now live. And I was only able to stay for a few minutes, and I just thought that was it's a very sincere note. I don't know if you received one also, but the mayor was actually able to stay for the ceremony. But he's a very, very nice man and still very spry. And The event on Saturday that Mr. Atkins keeps referring to is my wedding, and I did apply for a noise ordinance because I'm going to have some music. So anyway, that's what he is referring to. And Matt left, so I guess he ran away.
I told him he had options to get out of here.
Gaming?
Sure. I was going to see if Mr. Jeffries could maybe turn loose some of those groundhogs there for your wedding. That'd be really nice.
One more thing I'd like to say, I did offer my help. I'm physically disabled. I can do some things, I can't do others, but I did offer my help.
Okay, thanks. Sure.
Over a week ago, we had, again, another successful brass band festival weekend, and part of that festival is Run for the Brass, and I'm the one that does the awards presentation, and I'm holding an award for somebody who escaped us, so I'm going to give this award third place to our attorney, Stephen Dexter.
Oh, yeah.
In the young man's group, right? Young man's group, right?
How many were in the age group? 3?
I was going to ask if he moved up an age group this year.
Got anything?
What's that?
You got anything?
Is that all you have, Rick?
Yeah, my last thing then is coming up this Saturday is a very good cause. We took a moment of silence for this gentleman several years ago, Bill Pollum, very instrumental in our community in terms of giving back to the community. Certainly in his passing, his family and friends have started a 5K, and so if you all think about coming out, it'd be a good thing, Millennium Park Saturday morning.
And related to the brass band, I wanted to thank the Public Works Department, Earl and guys, you all came through in the clutch and got that Whittaker Park looking great. And, everything looked really nice and got a lot of really nice comments, so we appreciate it. And the other thing was this week, I think, is the Boyle County Fair, so I think Mr. Atkins is driving in the Demolition Derby on Thursday, so be sure to check that out.
I thought it was a pie in the face contest. Oh, man.
And speaking of Whittaker Park, I've had several people compliment us on the drinking fountain, mostly for the dogs and I guess maybe cats if somebody's walking their cat, but someone who walks their dog a lot, lovely lady that we probably all know who always walks with a smile on her face, said that her dog appreciated that greatly. It was a great idea. I gave Commissioner Sayers credit for that.
Thanks.
Let me begin my remarks by apologizing to Ms. Brown or anyone else that took offense at my comments, but I do not apologize for the comments, nor do I apologize for my delivery of them. And it's based on two things. Number one, we've heard all the complaints. We've heard all of the cut taxes. We've heard it all, but we haven't heard any answers to this. I have not had a single person come up to me and say, I looked at the budget, I really think we ought to do X, Y, or Z. So even a dog, after it gets kicked a while, it begins to back up. And we've made some hard choices here. Don't like doing it. I made the comment 2 years ago at the Danville Rotary that I would not raise taxes again in my tenure. And I'm going to have to eat those words sideways. So if anyone was offended by that, I apologize. But I do not apologize for my message. Secondly, I would tell you of the privilege I got. I'm on the Government Relations Committee at the Kentucky League of Cities. And the KLC put together a trip of our delegation to Washington, D.C. And from Monday night through, actually, let me rephrase that, for all day Tuesday and part of Wednesday. On Tuesday, we walked over 10 miles within the Capitol and adjacent buildings, but our mission was to discuss to every delegate there, every Kentucky delegate, some of our issues. And the interesting thing is we got to every delegate there, and that just doesn't happen. Here's a couple of interesting things that I would share with you is that in the eyes of the National League of Cities, the Kentucky League of Cities is probably the third most active league in the country. I was unaware of that. And the president's budget, he has proposed a zeroing out of the Community Development Block Grant funds, CDBG funds. Over 50% of the communities in Kentucky have less than 1,000 people. Without CDBG money, how in the world are those communities ever to survive? Where do they get their income? If we think we don't have enough critical mass at 16,800, what do they have? So that was our main mission to our delegation. Because that kind of thing really impacts the state of Kentucky. And I guess the other thing that if you haven't taken a week to 2 weeks, do yourself a favor. Go visit the nation's capital. I mean, every time I come away from there, I am just in awe of our history. It's truly inspirational. Our new planning and zoning exec has already been referenced. I've gotten a call from him. He's proactive. He says he's going to work 5 days a week. He's going to give each one of us his cell phone, and his message is loud and clear. If you have something you need to talk to him about, he doesn't care what day, he doesn't care what hour. He's ready to hear from us. That's the kind of pro-business thing that I like to see. This community is big business. At $50 million a year, this is big business. And I told somebody earlier today, there's nothing that goes on of a negative nature in the inner city of Detroit that doesn't go on in Danville, Kentucky. This is big business. This is not Mayberry anymore. And yet I think we continue to have something of a thought that, you know, gosh, yeah, why is it expensive? Gosh, can't we have it like it used to be? Well, those times are gone, and they really are. And while Mark's article here is appreciated, you know, one of the things I got out of RKG was that instead of us sitting and making comments as to, well, why can't we get more business in here? Everybody else is. We need to be offering our assistance. All of our citizens need to be offering our assistance to whomever in economic development, to tourism. I'm sorry Jennifer had to leave. But go ask somebody in economic development, what can I do to help? We got that message, right? That it is a team sport, it's a team effort. And for all of us as a community to sit back and let a couple of handfuls of people try to carry that load, that's not the most efficient way for us to go about it. I had an interesting exchange. I don't want to say that. I had a need to call 911 and access our police department because of somebody who clearly was on something that I. My message is I watched Danville's finest in action, and they're just good professionals. Tony, you just got good people, and they're well trained, and I don't know how they do what they do, but I admire them for it. And then finally, somebody told me that down in Houstonville, that they're trying to deputize a cat down there. Well, if you remember the cartoon show Deputy Dog, I'm just saying, if we need a dog to deputize, I'm just saying.
Mr. Mayor, before we move on, I'd like to make some comments too. One of them is directly aimed at Chief Gray. Two of them, really. I saw Danville's finest at the state high school baseball tournament, and I could only see him from the rear. He was behind home plate, calling the ball game.
Better side, yeah.
I didn't say that, Tony. And the other one, Tony, is in my recent travels, both countries, the law enforcement officials are required to keep all of their weapons locked in the trunk of their vehicles. I found that very, very, very amazing. And then my last comment is, Mayor, I'm going to a KLC workshop this Thursday, Friday, and Saturday. But I'm only going to Lexington. Something wrong with this picture. President Wright. It's the Kentucky Black Caucus of Local Elected Officials 2017 Annual Summit, June 16th and 17th. But I'll be back in time for the rowdy party, right? But look forward to going again to the.
Was that the one held here last year? Didn't we host that at some point, or?
Been two or
Been a
three
couple
years
years?
ago, yeah.
Mhm.
But we did host it, yeah. But this is the annual summit, so it'll be a nice crowd at that. I'm going to the Marriott. How about that? Won't see the White House, no, but.
Better than Howard Johnson's.
Ah. I was trying to recognize President Wright. He's president of the.
Oh, no, not president. No. Just planning committee.
Oh, see, I'm already promoted it, Anthony, right? All right.
Anything else? Then we'll move on to item 11, payment of the bills, which you have in front of you. Do I hear a motion?
I move.
Go ahead, Mr. Atkins.
Pay the June 12th bill list of $545,486.69 as presented.
Thank you, Mr. Atkins.
Second.
Thank you, Mr. Cardle. Any discussion? All in favor of the motion, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, like sign. Item 12 is resolution number 2017-06-12-02. This is in the Boyle County Health Department agreement. Ms. Donna?
We just ask that you approve the resolution as presented. It's a contract with the Health Department to do biometrics for city employees at $30 per person for this fiscal year.
I'll move to approve resolution number 2017-06-1202.
Thank you, Commissioner Sears. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you, Commissioner Terry. Any discussion?
What is this that they do for us?
They do a screening once a year. They come in and do check blood pressures,
Oh,
body
okay.
mass,
Gotcha.
sugar levels.
Thank
It's part of our wellness.
Any further questions? Seeing none, all in favor of the motion signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed, like sign. Motion carries. Item 13 is the utility service resolution of 2017-06-12-03. This is in regard to the Strand contract amendment. Mr. Coffey.
Thank you, Mayor, Commissioners. You have in front of you the resolution which accepts the amendment to Strand and Associates base contract. It affects items 2, 3, and 4 of that contract. If you'll refer to the color drawing I provided for you, there is originally the city conceived of a stormwater project that I highlighted in orange, which was from the intersection of Broadway and First Street down to the Dollar General development, where they upsized some facilities under their property when they redeveloped it. As we've gone through some of the engineering and investigative work, the area that we've highlighted in yellow, which is the continuation of that system all the way to Walnut Street, we are asking the commission to include that in the base study moving forward and really expand the consultant scope dramatically as it relates to that storm system. If you'll see on the south side where's the end of the yellow line, you'll see a stand of trees. That's an open channel ditch. And through the course of time, the city has enclosed that open channel ditch from Walnut all the way up to, or from Martin Luther King all the way up to really beyond that First Street intersection. And what we are finding as we go through the investigation is we have a sundry of pipes going in many different directions feeding into that system. Also, the yellow line is really not the system that we were led to believe it was as the post office redeveloped. They really didn't do the extensive replacement of some of that system that was needed back in the 90s. So At this point, staff is requesting that you expand the study as indicated in the amendment. It extends or adds $27,100 to their contract, raising it from $35,800 to $62,900. That is a small portion of their contract overall, which is in excess of $112,000, as I recall.
Do I hear a motion?
Move for approval of Resolution 2017-06-1203.
Thank you, Commissioner Cardle. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you, Commissioner Atkins. We are in discussion. I have a question. Was the federal government supposed to do something here on the post office parking lot that they didn't do?
I don't really know that they did or didn't, to be honest with you. What we have found is really some junction boxes that is not really what you would want and really don't function. The work that we have done historically indicates the flow that crosses that property. And what is apparent without doing any work is that the infrastructure that is from Main Street to Martin Luther King won't carry the flow. So that needs to be reanalyzed and really rethought so that we don't create a problem downstream.
Just a point of interest, I believe the origin of this was originally the town branch.
Correct. Yep.
Any further questions or comments? Seeing none, I'll call for vote. All in favor of the motion signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, like sign. Motion carries. We have first reading of ordinance number 1896, which relates to the alcohol ordinance amendment. Counselor.
Thank you, Mayor. This is a first reading of an ordinance amending the existing ordinance pertaining to alcoholic beverages, and the General Assembly passed a cleanup bill of their alcohol provisions in House Bill 183. This ordinance simply mirrors those changes in our local ordinance. So it is a clear cleanup bill. It is 8 pages, but it's just changing our ordinance to match what the state recently passed.
Okay. Do you hear a motion?
I move for first reading of ordinance 1896.
Second.
Thank you, Commissioner Atkins. Commissioner Cardle. Any discussion?
Clarification again. So this is just, as you said, mirroring what the state's done. It really doesn't change the fee structures or?
There are some fees that are changed, but per the state statute.
Okay.
Nothing that we would have discretion in changing otherwise.
Okay. All right. I didn't really notice. I noticed a lot of line outs here, so just look.
Yeah, the line outs, again, are what have been struck by the state, and the underlying portions of what have been changed. So just take, for instance, there's a rectifier's license that used to be $3,000 a year. The state has changed that to now allow a craft rectifier only a $960 a year fee. That's just one of many small changes. There are a couple of fees that have changed, or a handful, but the majority are cleanup languages.
Motion's made and seconded. Any further comments? Call the question. All in favor of the first reading of ordinance 1896, signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed, like sign. Motion carries. Item 15, first reading ordinance 1897. This is in regard to the alcohol regulatory fee rate adoption. Counselor?
Thank you, Mayor. The law allows cities that have alcohol to charge a regulatory fee. You saw that on the chart you showed earlier, the revenue that the city derives from collection of those fees. The law states that we should note that in Danville, that fee was set when the ordinance was first passed, and it has gone unchanged every year. But what the law also requires is that cities do an analysis to make sure that the fees collected, which can only be used for enforcement of the extra administrative services and other enforcement mechanisms that go into place with regulating alcohol. So it is restricted revenue. So when you showed it on your pie chart, it is revenue, but for a restricted purpose. It can't just be used for general fund purposes. And there's an analysis that's done just to make sure that the rate charged does not exceed full reimbursement to the city. As you can see, there's an income statement here that is produced, and it shows that the total revenues were just shy of $560,000, and the actual expenditures related to alcohol enforcement and services were well over $1.1 million. So it's evidence that that deficit of about $620,000 it shows that our fee is not in excess, but it's rational. It doesn't fully reimburse the city, but we have to show this annually that the fee does not exceed reimbursement.
Any further questions?
I move to accept ordinance number 1897. First reading.
Motion's made by
Second.
Commissioner Sears, seconded by Commissioner Cottle. Any
Okay.
further discussion?
Yeah, question. So we haven't changed the any of the fees, the percentages. Just have to do this.
They've not
as a
been
matter-
changed since their inception.
Yeah, and they're not being changed now. I guess that's what I'm saying.
That's exactly right.
Okay.
No further questions? Further comments? I'll call the question. All in favor of the first reading of ordinance 1897? Really, I guess we should have had a roll call on both of those, should we?
It's only on the second reading, isn't it?
Huh?
I prefer to have a roll call on every ordinance reading. It's my preference.
Well, you want to go back and do 14 again?
Yes.
That's up to you, Mayor. I'm just sharing my preference for the record. I prefer all ordinance readings have it that.
Well, we always want to adhere to your
Well,
preferences
speak
there,
up,
Commissioner.
counselor.
Don, if you'll do 14 again, 1896.
1896, the first reading.
Yes.
Mayor Paris,
Yes.
Commissioner Cottle.
Yes.
Commissioner Series,
Yes.
Commissioner Atkins.
Yes.
Commissioner Terry.
Yes.
I'm on to you. It takes longer. That's why you want us to do it that way.
Now let's do 1897.
Commissioner Cottle.
Yes.
Commissioner Series,
Yes.
Commissioner Atkins.
Yes.
Commissioner Terry.
Yes.
Mayor Paris.
Yes.
Trying to guess where she's going next.
I believe we do not have an executive session tonight. Is there anything else? Do you hear a motion to adjourn?
Well, move to adjourn, since in the minute, according to the minutes, I'm always the one that moves to adjourn.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, like sign. Thanks.